listening to Finding My Own Weird, where we'll follow yours truly on a journey to discover my own authentic weird self. I'm your host, Christine Lassiter. Joining me will be amazing guests who found their own formula and are living and thriving as their own wonderfully weird selves. So hold on tight, it's about to get weird. A while back, I was at a party with my girlfriends, and one of them turned to me and said, "You just have to have a story for everything, don't you?" It was harsh and accusatory, and it crushed me. All I could think about was how annoying I must be to others. And the only way to not be annoying was to be quiet. And that sat with me for a long time. When I moved away from Texas, I moved away from those friends. I can look back and see that I was invited, but not included. I was on the fringe of that group for so many years. Once I got to Portland, I followed every What's Happening in Portland event app there was. And then one day I came across a notice for an upcoming podcast recording at a local bar. I was still new in Portland, so I went by myself. When I walked in, I was the only person there that was not directly connected to the host. But he loved it. He was just so excited that somebody else was interested in what he was doing, and I can relate to that on so many levels. Several months later, I was on his podcast telling one of my stories. After that, we went to several storytelling events in Portland, and even though they were all different from each other, they were all amazing. And then I came across TellTale. I loved it. It was in this funky old church, and the people there were just so real. Fast forward, and I ended up on that stage 3 times, twice for storytelling, and once fulfilling a dream to perform stand-up comedy. Yep, the stand-up grandma, Gidgy or whatever. And nobody looked annoyed, and nobody looked bored. They laughed, they were engaged, they even applauded. I came to discover it's not me or my storytelling, it's the company that I keep that makes the difference. I love telling stories, and I have some awesome ones. Remind me to tell you about the time I had to tell a 93-year-old and an 87-year-old that they had to stop having sex. I love making people laugh, love being the center of attention. It's who I am. So today I celebrate this loud, chatty person that I am. And hey, I have my own podcast, so I get to talk as much as I damn well please. But I'm also going to listen a lot because people are fascinating and have so much to say. Today, I'm talking to Jasmine, host and founder of TellTale, a monthly curated storytelling show in Portland, who thinks that you should drink more water, stop at looking at bugs, make all your pie crust by hand, and draw all your ghosts with knees. Hi, Jasmine. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I actually met you. You do a storytelling event, TellTale, and I met you when I saw that and have actually been on your show a few times, which is so cool. But
Thank you.
It's really cool. I enjoy it so much. You are such a creative person. Like you can see it on you. Like you're like one of those people that just exude creativity and interesting. So I want to kind of talk about where Jasmine kind of started, where you grew up and kind of, your journey to get to where you are now, which is, listening to other people's stories. So let's talk a little bit about, where you started.
Yeah. I started out in Warsaw, Indiana, which is a pretty small town, and that I wanted to get out of as soon as I could. And a lot of my younger years were pretty based around the idea that this is not forever. I cannot be here forever. Life is going to be not worth it if I have to stay here forever.
All right.
I was a very sad kid because of that and just fairly lonely. The town was super religious. We were not super religious. I grew up unschooled, which is even more loose than homeschooling. And there was a lot of homeschooled folks there, but they were super religious, so I wasn't allowed to be part of that, basically, since I wasn't religious.
What is unschooled?
So unschooling is like homeschooling in that you don't go to school, but homeschooling frequently still brings school home in a way. So you're bringing home textbooks, there's still a curriculum, there's still expectations, depending on what state you live in, there also might be a lot of like benchmarks or testing and that kind of thing. Unschooling is the idea of the learning is completely child-led. So it is going to be whatever the kid is interested in, foster that and let them just like run with that for as long as they're interested in something. Even now, I know that I am far more likely to actually retain information if I'm learning about something that I care about. And if you force me to study something that I don't have any interest in, it doesn't stick. I can get the information in, but it doesn't like hang out there.
Did you learn like things like the basics like ABCs and?
I mean, I can read.
Right.
I mean, I was surrounded by books and really loved reading. And I have like my first journal, which is where I'm like faking cursive, just like the loops and everything. I couldn't write. I didn't know how to write, but it's just like loops and trying because I thought writing was cool. So, and there's like some stuff, even politics. I did not learn about anything about like the different, like the houses or none of that stuff, you know? And it's fine. Like if your kid doesn't learn that stuff, it's kind of just fine. I learned stuff.
Right.
And I was super independent and I worked a lot and met a lot of people, not people my age. Primarily I was talking to adults, which does make for a different kind of growing up. But it also, I was much more interested in what adults had to say than folks my age in general.
Well, since you didn't attend school and weren't a part of the homeschool groups and stuff, I mean, was it difficult to make friends?
Yeah, I didn't have many of those at that time, which, is part of like the sad kid stuff. Yeah. But I also didn't really want to be friends with the people that were around. It didn't make sense to me. They did not ever seem on the same page as me. It was mostly focused. I read a lot. I worked a lot and was focused on like, what are the different things that I could do to like leave, even if it's temporary.
Right.
So I made friends online once the internet was like suddenly becoming a thing in my late teens. I would go visit those folks on Greyhound starting when I was like 13.
Oh, wow.
And would go and hang out with friends in different parts of the state.
You had some progressive parents then, huh?
In some ways. Yep. And I'm just like super independent. And I think that at some point there was probably this feeling of like, it's going to be worse if we tell her no. So we're just going to let this happen. It's to have less of a power struggle.
Right.
About stuff.
So you met people online. I mean, not being a part of those groups, did you feel like outcast with those homeschool groups and the others in the community?
Yeah, I mean, there were a handful of folks that I tried to hang out with that we had like some stuff in common, or people that were a little more flexible about the fact that we weren't religious. I still think that a lot of those folks maybe were hanging out with us with the theory that they would like convert us
Change you
eventually.
Yes.
And so when that didn't happen and things would kind of peter out, I was also just like not interested in the things that the kids my age were interested in. I really I wanted to like read stuff that they weren't allowed to read. I would watch movies, and then by the like my friend would come over to watch movies, and she wasn't allowed to watch a movie that had like more than 5 swear words. So when it hit 5, we'd have to turn it off, because that's how a rule should work.
That's a funny thing. Like you can hear 5, but if you hear 6,
absolutely impossible. No,
you're going to hell. Straight to hell.
That same friend.
That's 7. That's 8. I might have added more
Sex
words.
and Candy, that song by Marcy Playground. She would like sing along to it in the car, but she couldn't say the word sex.
Yeah.
And so she would have to like self-censor.
Right.
Because she couldn't even say the word sex, which is not a bad word. It is like a totally normal thing that like most people dig. I was ready to leave pretty swiftly. I worked, I sold like 1 million Girl Scout cookies, so I could, because if you did it, you could earn camp credit and like leave. Well, it's hyperbolic, but as many as possible, because then you would earn camp credit, and then you could go away to summer camp, which was not in my town, and just anything to like get out and do something else and be around different people and like have adventures. And then my parents, I had always wanted them to leave out of that area, and they didn't want to do it. And they couldn't afford it, and it wasn't going to happen. When I was 16, I went to a summer camp for homeschooled kids out here in Oregon, and I loved it. I stepped off the train, I took the like Amtrak out here from Indiana. When I was 16, stepped off the train at the station and was just like totally in love, in like if you can fall in love, like love at first sight with a city in the same way you would like a prom, like where everything else gets fuzzy and you're just like looking at the one thing. It was like that, but with a whole town.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
And
been there.
then we went out to the summer camp, which was it was like in Myrtle Creek. I never remember if it's Myrtle Creek or Myrtle Wood, but one of those. So we went to the summer camp, came home, and I was like, that is where we're going. We're going here instead. My parents finally were like, we're going to move. Let's go. And they decided to go to a really small town in Texas, which did not make sense to me. That was not going to fix any of the problems that we had trying to be in Indiana. It's not like that was going to be like a liberal bastion out there.
Oh no, not at all.
No. My mom also cannot handle heat. And so that did not make sense to me.
Yeah, there's a few places that you don't go if you can't handle heat. I lived there for 43 years. I still couldn't handle. I was raised and lived there, couldn't handle heat.
No,
You
I don't
go there
like
for
it.
that. No.
So I just pitched like this like massive campaign of like how moving to Texas is stupid and we were not doing that. And the whole
Right.
family was moving to Portland instead.
Mm-hmm.
And I printed out a lot of stuff and I was very passionate about my opinion about this. And I ultimately won. And so my parents were like, okay, we're going to move to Portland. My mom, who had never flown anywhere by herself in her life, got on a plane, came out here, realtor picked her up at the airport. She went and toured houses for a day and a half, put an offer in on one. Out here in Gresham, actually, where this studio is, not that far.
Wow.
And flew back. I went to summer camp that second year, so a year had passed in between these things, and then met them out in Oregon after the summer camp had ended. And we've been here ever since.
Wow.
And I met my partner when I was 16 at that first year of summer camp. And then when I was 18, we got married and they came out here with me. And so this summer we'll have been together for 22 years.
Where was your partner from that they were in that summer camp?
Yes. Colorado.
Wow. I mean, like, that's insane.
Yeah, just like the number, I frequently think of the number of decisions and happenstance and luck that had to fall into place to end up at the same year of a certain summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't know the camp existed until I saw it in an ad in the back of Home Educators magazine. So my mom had to have like decided to get a subscription to that. Otherwise, I probably would never have seen it.
Right.
And I was only looking at it because in the back of that magazine, they had a list of like homeschooled pen pals from across the country. So I was like looking for the pen pal ads and happened to see this other ad for the camp in the middle of it. And I had saved up enough money to be able to afford what felt like an astronomical amount for a week of camp because it was like $400 or something, which is like nothing now.
Yeah.
But at the time I had like saved so hard to be able to afford like the train ride and the camp itself. But that everything fell into place and one of the things that came out of that was like meeting my person.
Wow. So you got here to Portland. Did you still feel the same way about it? Were you still in love with it?
Yeah, pretty head over heels. And I still am. We've been here for like 22 years now. And it still gives me a lot of the same feelings. The city has changed a lot.
Right.
Which there are pros and cons to. I also think that as a person who arrived, I felt weird. I felt odd, but this city really felt like a really good fit for me. And I've had this feeling that like, oh, this must be a city that's welcoming to everybody. And I didn't know until much later on. I was like, no, it's super welcoming to you because like I'm white.
Right.
And so there's definitely like, it's problematic in its own ways and has like a nasty history that is part of it. And so I try and always think about that when I'm like so grateful for how comfortable I feel here.
Right.
That is not everybody gets to feel that way about it. But
when I interviewed Kevin Cook, Poison Waters, he was raised in primarily white areas. And this blew me away. He said when he moved to Portland, it was the most Black area he'd ever been in. I was like, what?
I mean, this is the most diverse place I'd ever lived in because I came from this like, super small town in Indiana that didn't have anybody else other than white people.
Well, you can have diversity. There was a lot of diversity where I came from and still a lot of hatred and racism. So, so yeah, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, having more of a certain population. So when you got here, I mean, kind of where did y'all pick up from there? When you first started here, bright-eyed, you just moved to the city that you fell in love with?
I mean, we moved in with my parents for the first like 6 or 9 months, which went really terribly. Had a falling out with them pretty swiftly, and I haven't talked to them in many years. Like they're out here, but I'm not in touch with those folks. And so a lot of it was just trying to like get our feet. So we moved out here at a time that December 2001 that was like really, really challenging to find jobs. We tried really hard. It took a lot of effort to finally like land our first jobs, which were in the food court of the Lloyd Center. I worked at All American and ice cream for the first couple of weeks and then left because the boss was a misogynist and went across the food court to work at Paradise Bakery instead. My partner kept working at All American ice cream and frozen yogurt, which is, I think maybe just recently closed, but it might still be there. But we would across the food court from each other so we could wave and take breaks at the same time. And that was kind of where we were starting out. We hung out there a lot. We started to meet people because we didn't really know. We had one other friend in town from the same camp that had moved here. And so we hung out with him a lot. But that it was just starting out because, we were young. I moved out when I was 17.
Yeah.
And so had to wait till I was 18 to get a better apartment so I could actually sign a lease legally, and just trying to get settled, trying to like make whatever our life was going to look like out here. My partner was supposed to come out here temporarily and go back to Colorado for college and had gotten accepted, and then came out here with me and was like, no,
Not going back.
I'm not going back. We're staying. And we've been here ever since.
Well, that's awesome. So after your stint at Lloyd Center, where did y'all go from there?
I went from Lloyd Center to, a movie theater on 82nd. And then it feels so long ago now. And then I worked at a porn store for a couple of years. And then I worked at a bakery. And then I worked at a different porn store. And then I worked at Tub and Tan, which is on like 82nd and Stark, which is like hot tubbing by the hour and tanning beds.
That seems sketchier than the porn stores.
Yes. Because a hot tub for 1 hour rental is cheaper than a hotel.
Oh.
And so, and like sex work is great. Like,
no, it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
but I don't want to be in a hot tub.
It was it was unclean and I do not recommend it.
Right.
Lots of sketchy things. The boss of that place was a bad man, who was very mean. And, I had to be involved in some like sketchy shit.
Oh man.
There was definitely a day where he came in, he called me and was like, hey, a guy's coming in, to pick up something from you. Can you like give it to him? And I was like, I guess. And then, so he like described where it was. And so he was like, go into the back in this back hallway, get the ladder and go up into the second light fixture from the left. And there was like a bunch of cash in a little thing. And he's like, give that to him. He's going to give you something. And I was like, what are you getting involved in, dude? But I was like 20.
Right.
Like, I really needed the job.
Just do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
did you see more characters at like porn shop and hot tub place than you did at the bakery? I mean, was there more like interesting?
The bakery,
characters?
I was mostly in the back of the house. I was actually doing the baking. So I was just mostly hanging out with the staff there. But I mean, every job has its weirdos and a different brand of weirdos. The porn store was next door to a bar. And so people just get like really, really drunk and come in and laugh or be weird or buy stuff or shoplift a lot. A porn store on like 82nd and Powell it was lively.
Yeah, I can imagine in that area it would be.
I've worked on 82nd like a shocking number of times. The movie theater was on 82nd, the porn store, the second porn store, and Tub and Tan were like all right in that same like 82nd strip.
Did you live near that area?
Not at all. I've always lived in Northeast and North. But that was just jobs, man. You got to pay rent.
You got to pay rent.
So you just roll with whatever it is.
And what people do in their own time, as long as it's not hurting anybody else.
Absolutely. And it was fun. Yeah. And I feel like working at the porn store was really good practice for being able to like talk to anybody about anything.
Right.
And so people coming in and wanting to buy their first dildo or their first vibrator or look for like a rental for them and their partner or whatever, and being like very embarrassed.
Right.
And and depending on the person, like if they came in really embarrassed and like shy, I was really happy to go and talk about the different products and what you could expect and what you were looking for and what would fit your vibe or not, and be really like supportive to that.
Right.
If somebody was an asshole, it was fun to just like mess with them.
Right. Of course.
One of the things you would do with the vibrators is like if people wanted to like check out a couple different kinds, you'd bring them up, you'd open them up and put batteries in so they could just kind of like hold them and see what the different, textures, weights,
Sure.
vibrations were or whatever. But people would get like, if they were being an asshole to me, I would just like turn them on and set them down on the glass case in front of you, which is so loud.
Right.
And so then they would always like have to grab them and pick them up and they would get like really embarrassed and they deserved that. It was like a gross job and not always like the safest. And,
Right.
and I got to practice talking to people about anything and just being like really comfortable with whatever people were talking about, whatever people were saying. Hung out with a lot of strippers, hung out in like the dressing room, helping people get dressed into their corsets or whatever a lot to like test them out, lacing up a lot of like stripper heels that are like thigh high and whatever on people. But like the next stuff I did was like social work. And I feel like all of what I've learned from working at the porn store was like was able to be like directly applied to my ability to be in social work and be able to talk to people about anything and everything without judgment or having a big reaction on my face if people are sharing like odd things.
People don't even realize what kind of skills they're gaining in different, like, when you started there, you didn't probably think, wow, this is going to be really good practice for a career I'm going to have later.
Not
That's
so
going to be
much.
very, important to a lot of people. I guess the right vibrator is important to some people, but, you go on to
absolutely.
do things that are a little bit more,
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my jobs like had like transferable skills I didn't expect.
right.
So working at the Girl Scout camp when I was like 15 and watching 32 6 to 7-year-olds definitely came in handy later on as far as big groups of people and trying to manage different
herding
forms of
cats.
chaos.
Herding cats, giving direction to people who don't always listen to direction. I think you do some of that now. And
Sure.
no, that's really cool. So you went from kind of those kind of interesting jobs and that's when you got into social work at that point?
Yeah, my boss at the porn store, her boyfriend, they wanted to hang out with me a lot. They would bring me places.
That's because you're cool.
But I was also vulnerable. I was like only a couple years out of small town. I was 20. She would sneak me into bars all the time because she was like this like porn store owner. And so she was like, whatever.
She knew everybody.
Yeah. And so she would bring me places. She would get me very drunk. And there were just enough times where I would be at her house after that. And when her boyfriend would put his hand on my knee and then I would take it off and he would try again. And then my hours started getting cut soon after that stuff. And I was like, I think that I'm going to be fired from this place soon. And I told my friend that, and he was like, well, they're hiring for peer mentors at my job. And I had always understood peer mentors to be folks that were like that had experience, like personal experience with substance use recovery.
Right.
And so I was like, that I do not like that is, I'm not in recovery. And he was like, no, I think that you have skills. I think you have stuff like you don't absolutely have to be in recovery to apply. And so I was like, all right. And I went and I applied for it. And the application process was really long. It's like an interview and then a second interview and like all these steps. And I did get fired.
Yeah.
And then hadn't heard back from that job. So I was like, whatever. And then so I went and applied this other porn store down the street. Got that, worked there for maybe like a month. And while this like interview process was still happening for the peer mentor position, and shocked myself to find out that I had gotten it.
Wow.
So went to start doing my first social work job completely accidentally based on needing to pay rent. It was not my goal.
You didn't think you were going to be. What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I think that when I was much younger, I thought I would be a writer or a journalist.
Sure.
And then I got older and was like, that is hard and not totally realistic. And then I thought I would probably be a waitress forever. And lo and behold, the writing stuff actually did come back around much later, but after a really big like hiatus.
Well, it's remarkable that no high school diploma, no social work license, but you were able to get into this field and work with people who really needed some TLC and some good listening and some good guidance. So, how did you adapt to that?
I felt like a big fake for a minute, just like a poser. And And it was also just really fun. So the position that was created, it's like a training position. So it's specifically made for folks that didn't have any experience in the field yet.
Right.
Were fairly young, so like around the same age as the participants in the program. So I started when I was 21, and there's just a ton of training involved. So it's like really supportive, and there was a lot of structure to it to be able to like ramp you up and make you feel confident and like competent at the thing. I did that position for 3 years, and then I changed into a different program at the same place. They had gotten a big grant for a different program that was working for folks with like severe and persistent mental illnesses and
Right.
also substance use, like a mix
Right.
of the two. And so I was like an intake person and home visit person for that program for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that grant ended, my position stopped. And so I thought I was gonna have to go back to other stuff. And then at the same time, magically, a alcohol and drug counselor in that original program with the peer mentors
Mm-hmm.
opened up, and so I was able to stay there and then go be an alcohol and drug counselor, which you have to have. So now I have a certificate of alcohol and drug counseling, which is a
Mm-hmm.
CADC.
And you didn't even make it
Um,
yourself. You earned
it
it,
was a
right?
real one. It was a real one. And so I went and got the certificate, and which you don't have to go to school for. You can do with just like 5 little like workshops
Uh-huh.
and then a big test
Right.
and work hours that you count up. And did that for a handful of years. And then I kept whining that like the program does not work because there is not anybody coordinating it. There really needs to be somebody in charge of this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I whined enough about that. They were like, fine, you can be in charge of it. Just coordinate it already.
Yeah,
So I got a raise.
just like with your parents moving to,
Yes.
or you
when
had,
when I get a
made your
thought,
case.
when I get a thought, I'm very hard to get off the case. And so then I was the coordinator of the program for a couple of years, and then they made me a manager. And it's always been a fairly small team, but then Measure 110 passed a year or two ago now. And that was something that we all voted on. And that was to fund like additional substance use supports in the county. And so we got a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my team went from like 3 people to 10 people.
Wow.
And so now I'm managing a team of 10 instead, and am able to continue bringing on other like young folks who have never done anything in the field before, and able to like train them and support them in order and ramp them up to be really awesome peer supports for folks.
Well, back when you were a peer supporter, what are some of the things that you would do in that position?
Yeah, it was primarily individual, like hanging out with folks individually or hanging out with folks in a group. So doing a lot of like rec activities. There's a drop-in center where I worked, and so we would go in there. It was a drop-in center for like homeless youth, and so we would go in
Right.
there and hang out with folks. And one of the things about early recovery is that it is tremendously boring. Everything that you were doing all the time, you can't do anymore, and all of a sudden all these hours of downtime stretch out in front of you.
Mhm.
And you just get so bored. And so one of the things we try to do is have as many like recreational activities as possible. And so we would take people to the movies or like play basketball in the park and have bubble tea, or go bowling, or we toured the bowling alley and got to go in the back and like see how the pin setters worked. Or went to like Stumptown and watched them like roast coffee all day, and then got bags of coffee to take home with them. And so it was a lot of just like filling up time. But also for very good reason, homeless youth are mistrustful of adults, and especially
Oh.
adults in institutions. It's like staff at places like that. And so one of the really cool parts of that position is that you were able to kind of like form relationships with people who are not so keen on forming relationships with staff. And
Right.
them not having those relationships is a big barrier to them being able to like get housing or get other types of support or like accomplishing the stuff they wanted to do. And so we were able to kind of like get ourselves in there and be more approachable folks,
Mhm.
because it didn't really feel like that you were like making a relationship with staff if
Right.
I'm just like playing cards on the floor with you all day,
Right.
and trying to kind of set those relationships up with the people that are like more resistant and more skeptical.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sitting in, trying to do counseling with somebody, or in counseling with a counselor that you don't know, that you don't have a relationship, and they're wanting you to, spill all your emotions and everything. It's very, very difficult. But
Mm-hmm.
but a pal,
Mhm.
in one of those. I mean, that's got to be like a stair step almost to
Mhm.
once you feel this trust and comfort, then moving a little further in the program's got to be a little bit more comfortable for them.
Yeah, and I was able to like vouch for their case manager and be like, hey, like I think this is a good guy.
Mhm.
Do you want to come like meet him? Like I'll come with you.
Right.
Or like helping people get to medical appointments or their DHS appointments or any
Yeah.
of that stuff, and like helping them like connect and coordinate. All those systems are like set up to be
They're
the hardest,
they're
worst
so
possible thing.
they're so hard.
Yeah. And that's for me. Like
Oh.
it is hard to coordinate and like work in those programs for me. And I am not a person currently homeless with like using drugs, with a bunch of trauma, with a bunch of mental health stuff happening.
Mhm.
So like the fact that we expect those folks to be able to independently do
Right.
that is absurd.
It is. I mean, you know, because I've talked to you a little bit, but we've had some struggles in
Yeah.
our family with that kind of stuff, and I'm very, very, very resourceful.
And
It's hard as hell.
it's so
It's hard as hell, and there's a whole lot of, hey, this might be an avenue. No, oh, that's not going to work for you. Here, this might. So it's so valuable to have some resources
Mhm.
and some guidance, because I mean, I'm like you. I'm not homeless. I'm not going through mental health issues. I'm not I'm not addicted to anything. I have electricity and I have Wi-Fi. I have all of the things that
and
you
a phone that
need.
works.
And it's damn near impossible.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it makes me a little bit emotional because, um, not everybody even has a support person that can be looking
Mhm.
for them. So to have a place, it just is, I mean, it's remarkable. So, what do you do kind of now? I mean, that's what you did when you were doing
So now I
peer.
manage that program. So I
Mhm.
hire on all of those peer mentors and train them and support them and get them all ramped up to do the stuff that I used to do.
Mhm.
It is always their first social work job. It is frequently their first job.
Right.
And so I'm hiring a lot of folks that are like 18 to 23.
Right.
So they're very young and they have lived experience with either substance use stuff, mental health stuff, homelessness, or a mix of all of those things. Which just means they got a little more going on that you have to like be a little bit like soft with when giving them feedback
Right.
or knowing that they are in like it is a tough job even when you're mostly doing fun stuff.
Yeah.
It is still tough. And I mean people that we care about die all the time.
Yeah.
Or have terrible things happen or they do terrible things or
Mhm.
whatever mix of that stuff. And it is really heartbreaking to watch somebody that you've tried so hard to do stuff with not make it.
Mhm.
And so it really balances out that sometimes we're able to like teach roller skating lessons and
Right.
just have it be really, really fun because it breaks your heart the rest of the time.
I need roller skating lessons.
We're setting it up right now. It's
Mhm.
gonna be like dance skate, so it's like not just roller skating, but like like dance moves at the same time.
Oh my
That we're gonna start
God.
offering for the homeless youth that we work with pretty soon.
Maybe if I volunteer, I can come learn.
That's gonna be pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, so how do you support your staff? Because you can be good at something and it can still wreck you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you support your staff and yourself dealing with these individuals that are in crisis more times than they're not, and the aftermath of all of that?
I mean, imperfectly.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I don't think there
and
is a perfect way
yeah,
to do so.
we do our best. Folks, it is tough. It is heartbreaking. We had someone pass away this week, and we get a lot of PTO.
Mhm.
I really encourage people
good.
to take a lot of time off.
Mhm.
We offer critical incident leave, so even if you don't have PTO, anytime something like scary or traumatic or hard or intense happens, people can get like up to 2 days off
Mhm.
for that paid.
Right.
And so I really encourage people to actually like take advantage of that resource.
Yeah.
We have like EAP counseling sources that you can like go and get like 3 or 4 counseling sessions like per incident
Right.
that happens. So there's that kind of stuff. We do regular supervision. I try and just make myself really, really available
Mhm.
for people. There's a ton of flexibility. So if you're like maybe you're having a really hard time this week because of some intense stuff that happened. Maybe this week you do a lot of behind the scenes, like computer work or learning work. I just had somebody that was really sick, but really wanted to didn't have the hours to be homesick.
Right.
But I was like, you can't come to work. And so just like sent him home with some like videos to watch. And he just like learned a whole bunch of like queer culture information and was extremely touched by it.
Right. Well, that's valuable too. I mean, there's, not necessarily, it doesn't all have to be all in person with the individuals. I mean, the resources that you gain by training materials. I mean, I used to work with Alzheimer's, and, I went to a training that, just blew me away with how you could work with those individuals. Even though I dealt with them all day, every day, going and learning something new, a different approach. It was the best friends approach, and it was amazing. It's kind of similar in that where you're not telling them to take a bath. You're like, oh, we're going to go do something cool. Let's,
Yeah.
it's similar. Like you build that trust, like what you did with
the relationship.
Well, Portland is known for having, although I hate that people say that, because you can go everywhere and there is the homeless, the mental health, the substance abuse. It's everywhere. We do have quite a bit of that here. With that grant that came through, have you seen that help start to really, it's been a couple of years now, you said?
We voted on it a couple of years ago.
Okay.
For anybody listening to this who's mad about Measure 110 not working yet and still seeing homeless people, we voted on it a couple of years ago. Only actually got the money a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
And so I just recently hired my whole staff. So it's very new. People are already trying to repeal it because they are very angry that it hasn't fixed it. And they were just like throwing money at people who use drugs, because people hate people who use drugs and they hate people that are homeless, which breaks my damn heart all the time. But we just recently got the money. It's only up like really recently, like actually staffed and up and running and starting to move. It's going to be imperfect. And my team and my program really specifically is a harm reduction approach. So I am not trying to convince people to stop using drugs.
Right.
Because that doesn't work.
Right.
So harm reduction is assuming that people are going to continue doing risky stuff, whether it be drugs or self-harm or whatever else. But while they're doing those things, I want them to do it in the safest way possible.
Right.
I want them to have close, supportive connections. So if they choose to stop doing it or make changes around it, they already know people that can support them to do that. And it also just trusts that those people are experts on their own lives and gives them a lot of autonomy, that I am not going to come in and try and change anything about them.
Right.
People talk a lot about people having potential. Like, this person has so much potential. But that means that person is going to be really awesome once they change, which is not fair.
Right.
And so I try really hard to think of how amazing people are now with all of the weird flaws and imperfections and all of that stuff that comes with them in the way that they are right now.
Right.
I care very much about people who use drugs. I love people who use drugs. People use drugs for really, really good reasons.
Yeah.
And especially if you are homeless, why would you not want to get high and not experience that every day forever?
And escape.
Yeah.
And escape in any way.
And all of us escape.
Yeah.
All of us do it.
Oh, do not eat.
Yeah. We all find different ways. And some ways are going to have more harm on your body and some of them are going to have less harm. And that's fine. And you get to decide whether that works for you or not. So I'm never going to like tell anybody that they have to get sober if they don't want to get sober. And I'm going to give them a whole bunch of care and compassion and care about them very, very much right now in whatever life situation they've got going on for them, and invite them to go roller skating with us or go whitewater rafting or whatever. And sometimes that's enough that people do want to make some changes around their substance use. And sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes they die anyway.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such a controversial thing. It's not to me. I fully understand. And even more so now after having some experiences lately. But after I come from and everything, it's such a controversial thing to be like, no, they should be locked up. And I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine you're in this situation? You are that, let me say this right now, normal, everyday people with lots of support, lots of love, lots of resources can end up in this situation.
Yes.
100%. I'm saying this. I need you to hear me. I wish I could tell you more, but I need you to know it doesn't matter anybody can end up in this situation, and being locked in a jail cell will never be the answer to that.
No.
Because that is not the problem.
It will exacerbate everything.
Everything. The time, the compassion, the love, the support, the just being seen, heard, all of those things will at least touch the problem. And I'm right there with you. We've had things backwards for so long, and we see that it didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
So
But we still blame the person instead of the system that created it.
It's
Anytime
horrible.
somebody talks about like the homeless problem, I'm just like, but that still puts it on. I mean, it is a problem, but you're still putting it on the person. Like they fucked up. Like they're the mistake, instead of like the generations of shit that we have done to our like structures and our city and our politics and whatever that it created.
Yeah.
All of this, and how much it disproportionately affects people of color and people with mental illness and
LGBTQ and, anyway.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
It is. You and I both share a passion about that.
And most of us are, the vast majority of the people that live in this city and many cities are approximately 3 missed paychecks away from homelessness at all times.
In the pandemic, it really impacted everybody except maybe Jeff Bezos. But I mean, it impacted everybody so traumatically that those that were teetering fell off.
Yep.
Those that were 2 steps from teetering fell off. It's because you didn't fall off personally. I mean, you have to understand how this was already issues and problems. But when this happened, when the world shut down, it just devastated people financially, mentally, emotionally. You lost income, you lost human connection, you lost, I can't even think of a thing we didn't lose during that time.
It was a really wild time to be at my work too, because we worked through the whole pandemic. We were not working from home.
Yeah.
Because homeless people sure are homeless during the pandemic as well.
Right.
And also have nowhere else to go. Normally they're like hanging out in our space, but then they have somewhere else to go. They'll go hang out at McDonald's. They'll go hang out at, nothing was open.
Right.
They usually hang out at the library. Library's closed. They're just like nowhere else to go.
Nowhere.
For people. And just like, it's very challenging to get folks to wear masks, depending on their wellness at the time. If you are homeless, your hygiene, like you cannot wash hands as much as you're supposed to if you're living in a tent outside. Right. So it was definitely a tough time for staff, just trying to figure out how to like still come to work every day in that space.
And scary.
And trying to figure out what staff could do that and who were like immunocompromised could not do that.
Right. Well, so speaking of the pandemic, that's where you made a little shift. And well, actually, it was after the election, wasn't it, that you made a shift? The Trump election. You made a shift in some personal things that you needed to do. And that's when you came up with your child, which is TellTale.
Yeah. So TellTale, it came up after the election. At some point will be so far in the past we won't even have to call it anything anymore. But the 2016 election, when I was really, really mad, and one of the only things that I understand is that if you care about people, everything that's happened in the last many years, but especially these last handful of years, it has been traumatic for people. And one of the only things that is proven to counteract trauma is community. And I was trying to figure out what my community was because I needed some of that. And it was really tough for me to figure out what my community was and like how to plug into that, because it needed also to be like meaningful community. And so, and some people were like writing postcards, and I was like, yeah, I can write postcards to like, but like that's just like not a lot. And like a lot of people were marching, and I was like, that's a lot of people. And also I have a shitty spine. I can't really walk a ton. And so I was like, I can't really go do it. But like, what is it? What is my community? What is the thing that I can do?
Right.
And so when I couldn't figure out what my community was, I was like, oh, never mind. I will make one. And that happened around the same time as I went with a friend to go see her read at a storytelling show. And I had never done that before, other than like The Moth, but I thought that was like the only option.
Right.
But it was a show that Wild Fang, like the clothing store, had at the time. And so it was just like in their store. I went and saw her do it. It was fun. And then afterwards, everybody was like, "You should do it." And I was like, "Wait, what? What? No, I don't like public speaking, and I don't like a lot of attention." And then I impulsively was just like, "Yeah, okay," and then signed up for it. And so I went to Wild Fang and I did the show and I read a story. And I was like, I don't want to admit how much I liked that and how much validation. And like, I felt like I was like, I might die of anxiety, but if I don't die of anxiety, I'm also like the fucking king of the world right now.
Right.
That was like the coolest thing.
A little high.
And yeah, totally like over the moon about it now since I didn't die.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, I would like to find more places to do that.
Right.
And so these things were kind of like happening in concert with each other. It's like I needed more community. And I also was trying to figure out other places I could go read. And I couldn't find more places to go read. Like there weren't a lot of places that weren't, because we have The Moth here, but The Moth is competitive. You have to be like good at it.
Right.
And that means a whole lot of people don't ever get to do it. You also are not allowed to read off papers. And I don't know, my brain is not a brain that like can memorize stuff and then just say it.
Right.
And so I was trying to figure out what the other option was. And so we were like, never mind, let's just make one. Let's just make a storytelling show. And I feel like it was one of those things where if you told a younger version of me that I would do that, would have been like, fuck off all the way. But that does not make sense with any of the, like with your anxiety and with your like fear of other people judging you and all of that stuff. Like that does not compute. Like, what are you doing? And I told a couple of my friends and they were like, okay, what? That's not like, did not line up with me at the time.
Right.
And then we decided we would do it in June. I think it was June 2017 was the first one. And I started with that person that did the Wild Fang show with me. We started it together. It was clunky, but fine. Had a huge falling out with that other person. Immediately no longer part of the show. And I was like, okay, I'll just do it without her. That's fine. And then it was like way easier to do it without her. And now we've been going for 5.5 years. Like almost closer to 6 now. So like we're in our sixth season of doing it. When COVID hit, we took like 6 months off and then we did like a year plus of it on Zoom, which was a pros and cons. I did enjoy the fact that I was like in my pajamas and after the show was over, I could immediately go to bed.
Right.
And versus like being all the way across town, packing up and having this
up,
whole, yeah. But it was also, it brought community, but it also was totally different.
Right.
And so we're very glad to be back and actually doing it in person, still masked at this point, but definitely gives the community vibe back.
Well, yeah, I've been to them in the audience. I've been there and done storytelling. I even did my very first and so far only
stand-up comedy.
Which is such a cool thing to check off of my bucket list.
Yeah.
And
it worked too. People were laughing.
Hey, it was better than the one I saw last night. That was bad comedy. It was the worst I've ever seen, ever. And
damn,
like bad in every one of them. I saw about 10 of them in a row. Like,
was it a show or an open mic?
It was an open mic.
Open mics are tough.
But usually in an open mic, there were some funny people in an open mic.
Yeah.
This was like, we're funny to die.
Yeah.
Bad. But your show has such a great mix of creativity. There's stories of all types. And then there's some other pieces, like I did the stand-up comedy. Some people can do music. But it is such
I just think there's a lot of different ways to tell a story. So it can be comedy, it can be music, it can be dancing. When we were doing it on Zoom, somebody did pole dancing. We've had burlesque. We've had people read the thing while somebody else danced to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want to do to tell your story.
I love it because there are like, The Moth is a little more polished. There's a couple of things out there that are really polished and they're very well done and all that stuff. But there's just something human about going and seeing people they're not always so articulate. They're not always, they stumble on what they're saying and thinking, but it's so real. And you can tell that it is so personal.
Yeah.
And there's so much heart in that. And to me, I'm drawn way more to that than polished public speakers, who've done this for a long time. And people have stories. It's remarkable. That's one of the things I'm loving about doing this is
Sure.
people have freaking stories that are amazing.
But how would you know if you don't ask them?
You would never. And you might not ever have a chance to sit and, be in front of mics and say, hey, start from the beginning of your life and tell me all about you. But it's so cool. And I've enjoyed it every single time. And it's been very different every time because every person is different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the coolest thing. What are some of the funniest things you've ever seen on there in 5 years?
Oh my God.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Sure. Let's see. My friend Bowie told a story about pretending to be like a birthday stripper cop knocking, but at his parents' house. And then he had to dance with, we have a dinosaur on the stage.
Right.
Like a blow up dinosaur named Clark, because I thought the stage looked boring. So we needed a mascot. And so we just put Clark up there. My partner bought it and was like, this is now the mascot. And so Bowie danced with Clark afterwards. That was pretty incredible.
So he showed up at his parents' house as a stripper. And
Bowie is a very funny person.
And I mean, assuming, parents know their kids, they probably weren't phased at all. If you're the type that would do that.
I think I don't know how happy they were. But the story was incredible. I mean, it's just gone it really runs the gamut of like happy to sad. People have gone up there and like really struggled to finish their story because they were crying so hard. People who are just like so anxious that they like start crying and like they've never spoken into a microphone before in their entire lives, all the way up to like, I'm laughing off stage so hard, like I can't, like I need a moment before I go back up and do the thing.
And public speaking is, it's like the top fear. Like when you ask people, what are they most afraid of? Public speaking is it's the top, and not everybody, I love public speaking. To me, it's fun. I enjoy it. I get that high off of it like you did when you did your first one there. But that is such a small majority of people.
It's fun. Because now I just ask anybody. I'll ask my bartender. I'll ask I will ask the person in the next booth over at a restaurant. I've left my cards in weird places because I overheard people having like an interesting conversation. I'll just like ask anyone. And it's fun because sometimes you'll get, there's like definitely some like professional storytellers I've had that are like, they are very good at storytelling. They've done it a million times. And it's almost kind of boring.
Right.
They're too polished, too smooth. It's clearly a story they've prepared and prepped and it's really, really good. And they can just like go and they rattle it off. And it's almost like not that great anymore.
Right. Because they've lost the passion of it.
Yeah. It's just like it's like a product. It's become a product instead of like just like a human. And like some of my favorite stories I've ever heard are people like my friend Jason, who used to work with me. He was like in the fiscal department and I had never really talked to him much. And I was like, I'm doing this thing. I don't suppose. And he was like, yeah, I would totally do that. And came and told a story. He cried during it. And it was this incredible like love story about his wife and how his wife is like Meryl Streep and he's like Nicolas Cage. And it was like, everybody was just like, it was so incredible. But like, it was just like this random dude in fiscal that I never would have thought to ask. You just don't ask everybody because why not?
I mean, literally everybody has a story. I mean,
you've existed this long, so you have experienced things. You just don't always know how to form it as a story.
Right. And you give such a cool platform for that. And I've seen lately that you've even kind of morphed and you're doing even more creative things. Like recently you did, was it this last week that you did it in a different way? I'm trying to remember from your post.
Was it the Groundhog
show? I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. That was just on Thursday.
Yep.
Time. What is time? Yeah. So I've been doing the show for a long time, and I have been just trying to figure out how to like branch out and do just a little bit more stuff and practice some other skills and be more involved with other people. And so the folks that run the 7 Deadly Sins series of storytelling shows,
Right.
I'm friends with Todd and Alina, and so I hit them up and asked them if they wanted to like collaborate on a show. And so we came up with a premise. They do a show called Pants on Fire, where they have all of these people come up and do stories, and they're all definitely true, except one's a liar.
Right.
And so this one we did for Groundhog Day was the flip of that. So all of them were lies and only one was the truth.
Oh, yeah.
And when we picked who was going to tell the true story and they told what the story was going to be, we picked 2 things from that story, and everybody's story had to include those 2 things. That's the Groundhog Day part of it.
Right.
So I was the host of that show and like curated the lineup of that. And and then we had a Bill Murray costume contest during intermission. Which did not work.
Oh, no.
Because people did not do it. And so in the moment we decided that it would become a Bill Murray costume contest. And if you could come up here and explain to me why your outfit counted and be convincing enough, I'll take it.
Right.
Or if nobody could do that, anybody could come up and do a groundhog impression. And we did get 2 people to come up and do groundhog impressions, and we're able to give them a prize for that. It was very silly. And then we, at White Eagle, you have to, if you do a show earlier, you have to like take up the whole evening. And normally they do bands afterwards. We decided to do a comedy show. And so I also like curated like my first comedy lineup of like just not storytellers, but like just comedians.
You for sure did not have any of those guys over there last night. I promise you did not.
No, my lineup was stellar. My people did great. So yeah, I'm just trying to like branch out a little bit. I'm on this coming week. I'm on like a Planned Parenthood fundraiser, storytelling show about bad dates. And I'm just trying to get involved with other stuff.
I wish I'd have known about that one, because I could have taken up 3-4 spots in that.
A few bad dates in your life?
A few bad dates. The magician ventriloquist, I mean, like.
Oh, yeah, I'll do it.
Although, if I could find him now, he'd be great.
You'd probably interview him for
He'd
this.
be great for this. Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. So what are some other creative things that you're thinking of doing? Or like, I wish I could do, or I want to eventually go this direction?
I've kind of thought about podcasting. Podcasting seems hard.
It's a piece of cake.
Clearly.
I'm just going to tell you, this is the second take. We had to stop in the middle, at the beginning, because my record wasn't on. Piece of cake.
It's totally fine. Not a problem. So I thought about that, and then I don't know. I'm not sure if I feel that passionate about this part of it versus the like live nature of a show. So I've been trying to think like and be creative about, I feel like I just want to do different types of shows in different spots. They can bring people together in like random ways. There's a show in town that's called like Poetry Out the Window, and it literally started because this person was just like reading poetry out their apartment window, and people would gather underneath the window.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's smart. Like it's free. People just like show up and they in like lawn chairs and just like fill this like area of a sidewalk, and it's big enough that they've had to like close area like down a little bit. Like that's really smart. How can I do that? Like how can I find other things? I've also thought about doing some like dinner party and a show in my backyard, because we moved to a house with a really nice backyard. So I'm not sure what's coming up next, but I keep just saying, like, if anybody has anything, I would like to come yell my story at you.
Oh, yeah.
At whatever your event is. Is it a birthday party and I'm the only one doing it? I don't care. I would like to just come yell these stories, because I mostly write, because I always perform at my show too.
Right.
And then I write a story, and for the most part, I read it, and then the end. It like never sees the light of day again.
Right. You talked about writing. You talked about writing, you having a passion for that, and being interested in that as a young person, but that it's recently kind of reared its head again. What does that look like for you, other than writing these little stories for?
I don't write anything other than the stories for these shows. I am tremendously bad at doing anything if there's not a deadline. And the shows are really good for that, because I'm like, oh God, it's in like 42 hours. I probably should prepare it. And then I like whip something up normally the night before. Because I just can't, without that pressure, nothing happens.
Oh, ADD right here, medicated.
Yeah,
still
it's tough, man.
Still,
Brains.
rough stuff.
There's other things happening up there. And I don't know. One of the thoughts I've had is trying to do like a little chapbook or something and like putting them in like a book people could actually take, because people will be like, "Where can I find more of your writing?" And I'll be like, "No place at all."
Right.
It's like there's no blog, there's no publishing. Come to this show next time, and you'll hear one story that you'll never hear again. And so it'd be cool to have like something to actually like hand people that they could take with them.
You know, it would be very cool to have a book of the stories that people tell.
I've thought about trying to put things together like that.
I mean, like just right off the top of it.
Yeah. I've definitely thought about like the IPRC, the Independent Publishing Resource Center.
Mm-hmm.
They have like a bookbinding machine that you can pay to use and to do just like small runs of stuff. And so I've thought about trying to do that. I feel like I need other people involved.
Yeah, that's not a one-man job.
Yeah. And I feel like I want other people involved to make that happen. And also I hate collaborating with people because I'd like to be in control. Because if I'm in control of it, I know everything will go correctly. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, I know why and I can fix it. Mm-hmm. And when I collaborate, it's but something's going wrong and it's not my fault, but I also can't fix it.
Right.
I don't know what to do.
It's madness.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and I are more alike than I ever even knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse. Yeah. Cause you need sometimes that support, but also you'll go insane when you have to deal with other people who don't have your exact vision, that don't follow what you think.
Or have the same amount of like, I really want this show to go, right? Like
the passion. I know. That is why a podcast is kind of cool because, created it. It's all my vision, my idea. I mean, I don't have any control over what happens on the other mic, but that's part of the fun of it too.
You kind of do actually, because you're still going to be able to like edit it. If somebody says something weird or the whole interview is just like, oh no, like I did not.
Now, one thing I haven't figured out is if it's a bad interview, which thank God I have had the best.
Yeah, knock on wood.
The best. But it's going to happen at one point. Yeah. Then do I just go, hey, I'm sorry, but you're not as weird as I thought you were.
I have heard of people just saying that like something happened to the recording. Technical. I'm really sorry. It just couldn't. There was like feedback that we couldn't get out of it.
I'm going to cut this part out in case I ever have to do that to somebody.
For sure.
Was never said. I don't think I really have found just awesome people. So, I mean, I really want people to come to your shows and to come see what you've created because not only is it so full of heart and you can tell that there's so much energy that gets put into it, but there's also a lot of, it feels very Portland. It feels very weird and odd sometimes. And
it can be really awkward at moments.
But I absolutely love that about it.
What's more human than that?
Nothing. So yeah, it's such a cool thing and you definitely need to go, but you also need to sign up because you have a story. You have a story that just feels like, I just wish I could tell other people about this. It's perfect to do that at.
People get really in their head about like not being able to have a story or not understand what the story is. But like everybody has like leaned across the bar and told their friends something that happened like over their drink or their soda or whatever. Everybody has done that. You are all telling stories all the time.
All the time.
So just close your eyes and forget that there's an audience and just think about like telling it just to your buddy about your weird life.
Right.
Because it's going to be weird to everybody else because it's not theirs.
Right. I was once told at a party that, Christine, you just have a story for every story that somebody else tells. But it was done in such a hateful way in front of all my other friends. And I immediately shut down. I was like, I need to stop.
Yeah.
But then now I'm here. I'm like, hell yeah, work out. Tell some stories. Let's tell some stories, people. No, it's so cool. It really is just, it's neat to see such a creative journey to get to where you are now. And it's so cool, the things that you're looking into and all this collaboration. I think that we need this for
collaboration, whether I like it or not.
Well, whether you like it or not, but it gets you into avenues that you may not be in otherwise.
I'm trying to practice letting go of control, but I'm not good at it yet.
I'm not good at it either. I don't know how to do that. We'll see one day. I'm almost 50. I'm sure it'll happen when I'm even more set in my ways. But no, this is so cool. And I look forward to seeing even more unique projects that you have going on and seeing more stories and stuff. I know you're always looking for people to come
Mm-hmm.
and stand up there. And it's not scary. It's not scary. It's fun and it's such a welcoming, loving environment. People are not
That's
there
what I was
to
thinking
judge
too.
you.
Like the crowd wants you to do good and will like bend over backwards to like help you do well.
They are so supportive.
Yeah.
It's really one of the most. It's kind of like, you're talking about working in the porn store, people being nervous, but you're not nervous because you're like, this is what I do all day long. It's fine. It's good. You don't have to be nervous to ask me questions about
Mm-hmm.
dildos. But the same is true in your environment that you are now.
I feel like that should be the pull quote from this. Mm-hmm.
And it might be.
Yeah.
But you're in that same situation where you have a supportive environment that could be scary and intimidating and nerve-wracking, but you're in such a supportive, nurturing environment.
Yeah.
Everybody's there to be there for you. It's such a cool thing. It's so cool.
Yeah. People are really excited for you too.
Right.
To enjoy yourself and to do it up.
Yeah. I felt 1000% support, even when I did my stand-up comedy, which is way different than storytelling.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend it.
Yeah. And I especially want people to come that are like not white and not cis and just the show is for everybody.
Right.
And it's easier to have the show feel like everybody if everybody's actually there.
Right.
I've definitely had folks of color be like, I don't want to perform to an all white audience. And then, but also like audience members have been like, I don't want to see an all white lineup. And it's so anything that I can ever do to be able to get more people feel like the room is for them too.
Right. And I mean, I feel the same way about here. So we have to make sure that we're creating those environments.
I want to tell you about the show that I've had that I'm the most proud of.
Oh, please.
Which was the Ghost Show.
So
the Ghost Show is so a few years ago for a New Year's resolution, I decided I was going to learn how to draw. And then I was like, oh my God, drawing is really hard. I don't like doing things that I'm bad at. I don't want to do this anymore. At that point, I started sketching ghosts in the margins of all of my like work papers and on like Post-it notes and stuff, because you cannot tell me that my rendering of a ghost is not photorealistic, because you cannot prove that.
Right.
So I think my ghosts are exactly what ghosts look like. My ghosts happen to have 2 different sized eyes that are kind of crooked. They wear combat boots and they have really knobby knees. I don't know why my ghosts have skeletons, but they do. And they're very anxious and they shake a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I like them very much. And I draw them on everything now. And so then I just got like really into ghost stuff, because it also kind of represents like all the folks that we lose at work. So it kind of like has all these different elements that are part of it. I also moved into what I think is a haunted house recently. And so I decided to be really self-serving and create the Ghost Show. So last October we had the Ghost Show. It was in a much bigger venue than we normally do. And I really wanted to like do it up and have it be a giant event. And I was very, very scared that nobody was going to come and that I was going to be out so much money for renting all of these things. The regular show at the Chapel Theater where we normally do our stuff is like 30 to 60 people come on average. And the Ghost Show was just like, if we can at least get enough people in the seats to like pay for everything. Right. I just didn't want to go into the red. I really just didn't want to owe any money. And so, but we did it up. It was like a maker's fair. So we had all these vendors like selling creepy things. I had like ceramicists come with like ghosts with cups that had ghosts like engraved in them. We had like stained glass. We had all these like cool vendors. We had a bakery come and do like all these like ghost shaped treats. We had a tattoo van come and do ghost tattoos. We had a live screen printer come and I drew a picture of ghosts sitting at a bar at a table with some balloons. And so we had that. That you could get live screen printed on like whatever piece of clothing you brought with you. And then we had live music, and then we had a whole bunch of people we had a dancer, and then we had a whole bunch of people do stories that involve ghosts. And then we had some people come up in sheets and do what their obituaries might say. And then I did my piece, and the night went so great. And it was the first show I've ever made money at, because we sold 130 tickets pre-sale, and then more people bought them at the door. So I think we probably had close to 200 people there.
Oh my gosh.
And I was so nervous, and it was like the most like self-serving thing. I was like, what if I make a show that's about all the things that I like for me?
Right.
And then I did that, and it was perfect. And I think that my passion for it and interest. And like, we really tried hard. I took 1 million pictures of like my partner in a sheet to be a ghost in like weird spots.
I hope you did it up here, not down here.
It's okay if ghosts look big.
Okay.
That's actually okay if anyone looks big.
Right,
but,
right.
I think ghosts just have different beauty standards. So,
Right.
and we like hung posters up around town. We really went for it, and we totally blew it out of the water. It was so successful. So if you are nervous about the thing, if you are excited enough about it, that your passion will overflow for it, and people will go.
That is awesome. You know, it will never cease to amaze me that so many of my guests felt like outsiders growing up in some way or another. And to see how they've come to their own is remarkable. But yet it's not. They were always this incredible, amazing person. They always had potential to be great. They just didn't always have nurturing resources and environment. I can relate to that so much. I have a wonderfully supportive family, but I wasn't raised in a community that encouraged weird. And once I found that community and environment and those friends, I started to not only accept who I was, but celebrate it. This year, I plan on being more extra, and I'll find a place where all of this is just fine. To see the dates and times of Jasmine's TellTale events, follow the links below. I highly recommend that you check them out. I also highly recommend that you get on stage and try it out yourself. And then join us next week as we find out how our local UPS driver handles seeing you do naked yoga through your glass door. And for more episodes of Finding My Own Weird, like and subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel below to find out how I'm finding my own weird.